Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, October 25th, and this week, Lyft adds service animals the states with the highest pay, and drivers protest in New York City. LegalRideshare breaks it down. And from LegalRideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Bryant Green. Bryant, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jared. Great to be back for another week of This Week in Rideshare.
Yes, it is. It was a short week last week for me. I was in Seattle, which was quite fun. But now we're back at it. We're back hard-hitting news on Fridays, Bryant. We're back in it.
We never stop. Always got to go.
Stop. We've been doing this for quite a long time. We never stop. Speaking of which, before we get into the stories, I do want to give again a big shout out to the Gig Economy podcast. They are an infotainment podcast that streams every week at 8 p.m. Eastern. As they mentioned here, they break down the news in the gig economy world and interview gig workers and gig creatives worldwide. So again, they do this every week, typically at 8 p.m. Eastern. They covered a lot of this similar stuff that we do. You can find them on Facebook, Twitter, Apple Podcast. I also have links below in the description where you can reach out to them. And Bryant, you have, as we have mentioned, Bryant, you've been on the show a few times talking about accidents and things like that, correct?
That's right. Yeah, there's great content, good listen, definitely worth a follow and a subscription. So, make sure you find them and, tune in anytime that they put something up.
Right. And with that being said, let's jump right into it. Lyft is working on a service animal opt-in feature. This is from TechCrunch, and they reported a Lyft spokesperson said, "We strive to provide an inclusive and accessible platform for riders, including those who rely on service animals." They said the company is, quote, working directly with organizations in the community and also pointed to an upcoming service animal opt-in feature that should launch by 2025. The company mentioned the feature earlier this month, who said that this would allow riders to declare that they have a service animal. They'll only need to do this once, so the driver will be notified before pickup. I've always wondered, Brian, what is taking Lyft so long? A lot of frustrations from drivers, Lyft drivers before with service animals, what was considered a service animal. Obviously a good thing. I think drivers are going to be relieved. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I think this is good for riders and drivers. One of the biggest conflicts that we see in the rideshare space comes with service animals and animals in general. So I understand that drivers don't want random pets to be in their cars. A lot of drivers are worried about wear and tear. They're worried about, what's the animal going to do? Are they properly trained? Things of that nature. But the fact of the matter is, people with service animals have a right to have them travel with them. There's laws in place that protect those rights, and they're very important to the well-being of the people who need them. So there has to be a feature in place that allows drivers the peace of mind to know this is a legitimate service animal. This person is not just trying to slip one past me and get a free ride or not a free ride, but a ride for their pet. This is a legitimate request. And as long as everybody's on the same page and there's some sort of verification process where, this person who is bringing the animal in is opted into the service animal protocol, it just allows for a smoother transaction where the driver understands from the get-go, there's going to be a service animal. I'm going to accept this ride. The person that's requesting the ride is legitimately, requesting that the animal come with me. I just think it levels the playing field. It's a smooth, easy conversation and communication to be had. Everybody's on notice of what's going on, and it just quashes a lot of those anxieties that drivers feel when they pull up and see an animal, and that's their first notice of it.
Yeah, there's many cases that I've spoken to drivers directly who were literally deactivated over miscommunication with service animals. Some not having the correct leashes or any record of it, and so they didn't know what to do, and they would say no. And then, of course, as we know, passengers would then say, "Well, I'm going to, report you," which typically left to deactivations. I'm surprised it took him this long. I believe Uber has had this in place for quite a long time. Correct?
Yeah, my understanding is that Uber has done a better job with the service animal requirements and just making it as easy as possible for both the driver and the passenger to be on the same page. At the end of the day, people that need service animals have an absolute right to be accompanied by them when they're traveling. There's no question as to that. The key here is just making sure that there's an appropriate mechanism to communicate that need from the get-go, so the driver is aware that the service animal is going to be part of the ride, and therefore provides the accommodation that's necessary to the passenger. We just want to make it as simple and clear as possible for all parties, so that we avoid those miscommunications where a driver perhaps gets deactivated, or on the other side, a passenger does not get a ride that they're entitled to. So, let's just make it simple, have the opt-in feature. This is good for everybody involved.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. We're going to jump into the second story. Which states have the best pay for drivers? Well, we will tell you. This is from Yahoo, and they reported, quote, to find the states with the most competitive pay for Uber drivers, this one guy, Bader Scott, found the average reported yearly earnings for Uber drivers in each state, and then he compared this data to the overall average salary figures. While Uber drivers typically earn less than the average salaried worker in each state, the difference between the Uber driver's salary and overall average salaries was the smallest in these locations. So again, this is kind of the average. He's already stating that you get paid less, but I guess the buffer here, or the difference, is what matters. So number one on the list is Mississippi. The Uber driver's average salary was about $35,000, and the state's average salary is $51,000. It goes through the list. So basically, we have Mississippi, Arkansas, Indiana. Surprisingly, you may not think this, Hawaii is on the list. Hawaii is one of the top 10. So Uber drivers' average salary was about $40,000, little under $41,000, and the state's average salary was about $66,000. Even Maine was on this list. It's really interesting. It's a nice spin on this, Brian. Just saying, hey, this is the best wage for drivers, but you're still seeing, some of these percentages are 30 to 40% difference from the average worker. So as much as that's saying, hey, these are good places to work, it's still letting you know it's not really the best pay.
Yeah, I think this confirms that if you're looking to make big money, Uber and probably Lyft are not the best options for you. The salaried workers are routinely making significantly more money than the Uber drivers. It's oftentimes a 30% difference. What Uber and Lyft do provide, as they advertise, is a little bit more flexibility. You get to decide when you want to drive. You get to have the flexibility to log on and off as you choose, but there is a price for that. And one of the things that I noticed as a trend is that the places where salaried workers make less, the gap between Uber and Lyft drivers and salaried workers is also less. So it's not necessarily that Uber drivers are making more money in Mississippi. It's that salaried workers are earning less money. Therefore, the gap between them is less than it is in other places. So
Yeah.
in places where there's more poverty, in places where there's the salaried workers are making less, perhaps it is a better option to be an Uber driver, because you're getting the added benefit of the flexibility, being your own boss, so to say, but you're also not missing out as much on the salaried wages in comparison to other states where perhaps salaried workers are making a little bit more.
Yeah, Indiana is top 10, which is pretty wild. But if you look at the data here, I'm looking right now, it says, the Uber driver's average salary is $38,000, which is less than some of these others. But the state average salary is 60. That's almost 50%. So I think it's also, like you said, that, the places where the average income is lower, then the driver's income is also lower. So, but it's balancing out a little better. But still, it's quite a disparaging difference here. And Hawaii was interesting, but I guess for tourism, it makes sense. Obviously, it's not, I don't think this is including things like tips, but we've talked in length about tips where drivers often don't get them. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's really no change with that. We're going to head into the third story of the week. Hundreds of drivers protested New York City's lockouts this week. This is from AM New York, and they reported the New York Taxi Workers Alliance said over 1,000 drivers participated in the blockade on Monday morning, stretching along 11th Avenue from 30th Street all the way to 48th Street. Drivers traveled to City Hall and beyond, honking on the horns of justice to demand fair pay and the ability to work without disruption. And we've talked about this in length, but basically by locking drivers out of the apps, Uber and Lyft can effectively inflate a metric called the utilization rate, which means how much time drivers carry passengers versus their total time on the road. If the utilization rate is higher, then drivers are supposedly picking up more fares, and the apps can pay lower per minute and per mile rates to their drivers under the city's minimum pay rules. Bloomberg, as we had talked about last week, reported that these moves have cost drivers millions of dollars in income and driven many to the financial brink. Some have said they had to take out loans and max out their credit cards to pay rent and bills. Bryant, we discussed this last week. It is still happening, and drivers are protesting, and they certainly should.
They absolutely should. Yeah, we covered this story in detail last week in terms of the facts of what's going on, but I'm glad to see that the drivers are standing up for themselves, that they're collaborating. As we've seen time and time again, when drivers come together, things get done. It forces the local governments to listen. It forces the companies to at least understand that there is the potential for something like a strike. You are always better in these situations coming together, having many voices be loud rather than one person, trying to change everything on their own. This action that the rideshare companies are taking in terms of the restrictions and the blackouts are unacceptable. They are taking real money out of drivers' pockets. They are against the spirit of the law that was passed. Nobody anticipated that Uber and Lyft would put their finger on the thumb the way that they, or on the scale the way that they are. I mean, this is really, when there was negotiation for higher pay and minimum wages, everybody understood that there was going to be the same access to the apps, that drivers were going to be able to work when they wanted, how they wanted. And at this point, Uber and Lyft and the rideshare companies are changing that dynamic. They're taking a lot more control. They're controlling really when drivers can work, how much they can work. They're creating unnecessary surges for passengers. So everything that's going on right now is unacceptable, and the drivers need to be heard. And I love what they said in the article, that honking the horns of justice. That's what needs to happen. Right. They need to be loud. They need to blare them, and they need to demand action from the legislature, from the local governments, the people who put this law through. Make sure that the companies are held accountable and live up to the letter of the law and the spirit of the law.
Yeah, I cannot believe two things. One, I can't believe that this is legal. I don't think it is for what they're trying to do. And two, I can't believe they're still doing it. I haven't seen anything in this article or any others stating that there's been any lawsuits against them. I know there's these protests. I would assume there is. I mean, this doesn't, this kind of, as you brought up last week, this really kind of blows out of the water the idea that you're independent contractor at will. I mean, they're basically choosing the hours for you. I don't know how they keep, I guess they're just going to keep doing this until someone throws a suit at them and then they can try to fight it. I mean, I don't know do you have any thoughts on what they're going to do as far as strategy moving forward, or they're just going to keep doing this?
Well, at this point, there has not been a repercussion. So that's the thing, is Uber and Lyft are saving millions of dollars through these tactics. And there's been nobody that's willing to stand up to them so far that has the power to change their behavior. So what we're seeing right now are the drivers being active, the drivers being loud. And with that, I anticipate that there will be action that will force the hands of the politicians. It will perk up the ears of the lawyers who will see an opportunity to challenge Uber and Lyft in court. So this is the first step. Activism gets everything moving. And I have to believe that if the drivers keep fighting, keep being loud, keep demanding change, that there's going to be powerful people that follow them.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I'm sure we are going to be talking about this for a while, especially as, like you said, there's been no retaliation yet as far as legally. I can't imagine there won't be at some point, and it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out. Drivers, if you're in New York City and you're dealing with this or part of this, love to hear from you and talk to you about what's going on. Totally insane, totally unfair. It's just I don't know any other way to put it. But so that's the stories this week. And before we head to the weekend, Bryant, I'll let you have the final say.
Yeah, we always remind everyone that Legal Rideshare is available for free consultations. If you find yourself in an accident or injured on the job, please reach out to us. Consultations are always free. You can reach us through our website at legalrideshare.com. All of our contact information is there. Please don't wait to reach out. These cases do not get better with time. Evidence disappears. Facts, people forget information. So make sure that you call us so we can set a solid foundation for your case and fight to recover everything that you're entitled to.
Awesome. Thank you, Bryant. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.